All right, so I kind of want to just ask you about like your journey to where you are now. So,
Yeah, sure.
what were your early days like? I know you're into like marketing and stuff now too over at St. Joe's, but what was kind of your goals growing up? As a younger kid and adult.
I wanted to be the starting center on my college team, but at
Right.
5'5" and unable to go to my left, that was dashed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But like my first basketball memories, like believe it or not, are Wilt Chamberlain and the 1967 76ers, who went 68-13, won the NBA title, and at that time were voted the greatest NBA team of all time. Uh, so I started,
Yeah.
with basketball royalty. I
Mhm.
grew up in a section of Philadelphia called Overbrook. Wilt Chamberlain went to Overbrook High School, and I thought, wow, I guess everybody gets to grow up and root for the greatest player in the game.
Yeah.
But and then after that, attending St. Joe's, following in my older brother's footsteps, I kind of transitioned to college basketball. And in addition to covering St. Joe's, because it was Philly and the Big Five, all the teams, Villanova, Temple, Penn, St. Joe's, LaSalle, at that time, all played in one place, which was the Palestra.
Yes, sir.
And like a couple 3 nights a week you get to go to double headers, and it was like I majored in college basketball.
That's awesome.
And like I don't even remember what I majored in, but what isn't anything I'm doing now. I'm
Right.
pretty sure there was no such thing as bracketology back
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. So the Palestra, obviously, just a bunch of history. So just kind of talk about, you said you went to a bunch of games there in your younger days. Just kind of talk about the atmospheres and some games that stick out to you that you remember from those days.
Well, like I had a little thing, it was the size of a business card,
Hmm.
which was a media pass to get into the Palestra.
Right.
I had it all 4 years of college. So like I remember there was a night I was maybe a freshman or a sophomore, and St. Joe's wasn't even playing, but it was LaSalle, Western Kentucky, and Villanova, Notre Dame.
Hmm.
And like I didn't pay,
Right.
right? And it was maybe 4 miles from where I was living in college.
Hmm.
And you're 19, 20 years old. You kind of fancy yourself maybe getting into sports media, like you fancy yourself getting into coaching.
Right.
And you think, wow, like I could be, an accounting major doing something boring. And
Yeah.
again, there's no knock on accounting majors.
Yes.
The accountants, I suspect, across the board have a higher income than bracketologists. Um, I doubt many of them have more fun.
Yeah. No, 100%. I would agree
So,
with
that was kind of how it started. And I did have a real job from, the end of college until about a year and a half ago.
you. Hmm.
I'm retired now from St. Joe's.
Okay.
I still broadcast our games,
Hmm.
well, at least home games this year, of which there haven't been any yet.
Yeah. Right.
But allegedly there's one on Wednesday. So I haven't been in a gym or seen a live game since March the 11th.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. A long
and
time
and
ago.
and I'm kind of jacked about that.
No
To like
doubt. Who are they
hear
supposed to play?
it's the A10 opener. It's St. Joe's and VCU
Oh.
in, at St. Joe's. Yeah.
That should be a good one. Okay, so just quickly, I see you do like your work at St. Joe's was mostly like marketing stuff, right? I'm kind of curious about
Yeah,
just
non-sports. I
right.
was on the university administration side.
Okay.
So I was basically like the PR guy, spokesperson, chief communications officer for the school. I graduated in '82. I worked a bunch of different things, went back to St. Joe's in '87 and did it for 30 years.
Hmm.
which is probably about 29 years more than I was qualified for. Uh, and met a lot of great people and hopefully did some good. Like you, at a place where that is kind of mission driven
Yep.
and stands for a greater good. And along the way, got to broadcast a lot of basketball games and some really good teams over the years. So I'm grateful for that. And then, the doors that has opened in terms of college basketball beyond one school,
Yeah.
right? Like most of the country doesn't know the St. Joe's part,
Hmm.
or care, as long as I put their team in the bracket.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so that's now I want to get into, what you're known for most, bracketology. Obviously, always,
I thought it was my golf game.
Oh, well, I haven't seen it, so I might be wrong on that, but
Well, it's not easy to find a guy who shoots in the low 90s.
yeah, no, it's not. I mean, you're looking at one. There's two
We're
of
a dime a dozen.
them. Okay, so
That's on the front nine.
yeah, no kidding. The bracketology work, how did that kind of start? I mean, obviously you must have started it independently, and I'm just kind of curious, about how you go from, wherever you started to, being on ESPN every
Right.
month.
Uh, well, you might have to ask ESPN about their decision to put me on, but I've told the story a lot of times, and like a lot of things in life, it was an accident,
Right.
essentially. Uh, the part that wasn't an accident was getting hired by and eventually purchasing a college basketball publishing outfit called Blue Ribbon
Mm-hmm.
in the late 80s and early 90s, which then and now it's still going,
Mm-hmm.
is literally kind of the Bible of college basketball from a print perspective.
Right.
Like, you have to understand, there was a time before the internet,
Yes, sir.
and information was a lot harder to come by. Like, if I wanted to know, you know, who the first guy off the bench was at Winthrop, I would probably have to know a sports reporter
Right.
in South Carolina or around the Big South,
Yep.
right? Like, it wouldn't be easily accessible information. The only time, in the Northeast or another major city where you'd know about Winthrop would be if they made the tournament and they got that little paragraph in USA Today as a scouting report.
Yeah.
So at Blue Ribbon, one of the things we did was add to the preseason book an 80-page postseason edition.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the mid 90s,
Okay.
and we would literally print on Sunday night after the brackets came out, and print all night and ship it the next day, so people would get it in their hands by Thursday, in order to know about the tournament,
Yeah.
or hypothetically fill out a bracket, or I don't know, maybe gamble even.
Right.
And in doing that, Nate, in order to do it well, because we misfired in the first couple of years, like, we would prepare like 90, 100 teams to go in the book,
Mm-hmm.
because we had to have them all ready to go to print.
Yep.
But we were spending a lot of extra money preparing and time.
Mm-hmm.
And, like we said to ourselves, I said to myself, there has to be a way in which we can narrow the pool of potential teams to make this tournament, 64 teams at that time.
Yeah.
So started to study the selection and seeding process, in order so that, like, when we were assigning teams, maybe we were assigning 80 instead of 100 to get down to 64.
Yeah.
And it turns out, after studying the process, am I allowed to use this word? I didn't suck at it.
Yeah.
And it was something that people had an interest in,
For sure.
before the fact, because in those days, the committee didn't release anything. there was, no like media conference calls with the selection committee chair. There was nothing except this mystery of guys going into a room at that time in Overland Park, Kansas,
Right.
later Indianapolis, and poof, here's a bracket, and then a bunch of people would bitch.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm not saying I've been the best, but I was probably the first
Right.
to kind of make inroads as a public critique and inquiry of that process.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to doing brackets on ESPN.com, which came to be in 95, I think, 95 or 96. And it turns out the projections, what wasn't even called bracketology yet, those projections ended up being more popular than the book.
Yeah.
So I eventually, threw my lot in with ESPN, and other friends and colleagues continued with Blue Ribbon, and I contributed for a number of years, even after I sold my share. But eventually, having a real job, a side job at my real job, which was broadcasting St. Joe's, and then a side job in basketball, which was bracketology. Like, something had to go. Like, I had a wife and a dog and a family and a mortgage. Like, it couldn't all fit in one person's plate. So, I mostly stuck to the ESPN part to fulfill my basketball fix, if you will.
Right.
And every year it got a little bit more exposure, and eventually on air, and then a little bit more airtime each year.
Right.
And the powers that be at the network thought it was, an enhancement to their coverage, to the point now where, it's still December, and I'm in contact almost every day with producers of games or announcers on games who are saying, all right, Joe, I've got, I don't know, LSU Ole Miss on Wednesday night on the SEC network. Where do those teams stand?
Wow.
Because they're going to go on the air and give context.
Yep. No doubt.
Right. And I respect the fact that it's helping to create the narrative of the season for a ton of teams. And, I think you can take the work seriously without taking yourself very seriously. Like, I still work in Life's toy department, right? Like, nobody's lining up bracketologists to get the vaccine, right? We're not essential personnel. But people are entertained, and that's okay too. And the fact that, now that I'm, more retired than not, but still have an opportunity to work in something that's so fun and fulfilling is just a great blessing. And I don't know how long I'll do it. I'm 60. I don't look a day over 59, and I'm just happy to have the interest in the audience. And if I ever stop getting jazzed by it, it'll probably be time to hand it off to somebody like you.
Wow, I'd love that. Okay, so talking about those, getting some airtime on ESPN, going back to that, I'm just kind of curious, what was that first time like? You went on air to talk about bracketology.
Pretty scary. I remember it very well. It was February of 2002. There was a relatively new offering at the network, a new channel called ESPN News, which at that time was not just replays of SportsCenter and old games. It was an in-studio show that was kind of formatted to be a TV version of the website, like a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, a lot of like pre-analytic stuff, like, kind of sports nerds, if you will, who wouldn't normally get on like regular ESPN. and they decided to start doing like a Friday afternoon college basketball segment.
What was
You know,
that called?
it was just ESPN News. It was just
Oh, okay.
basically Sports Center 24/7,
Hmm.
and it was live,
Okay.
uh, but it didn't look like Sports Center does now,
Yeah.
and it was different from Sports Center. Uh, again, in that the content was like less featurey and more
Yeah. Fact.
nitty gritty, if you will. And they sent, I was at my desk at St. Joe's, and they're like, "All right, yeah, you're going to drive into Philly and go to this studio, and we're going to put a background behind you." And it was like Star Trek, like, "Beam me up, Scotty." And I couldn't see what was going on TV.
Really?
I'm staring into a blank screen, and there's a person in my ear
Wow.
saying XYZ, and he's like, "All right, they're going to ask you about your number one seeds. And when you hear music, that means we're playing highlights. Start talking about those teams."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "But I can't see those teams." He said, "I'll tell you who it is."
Wow.
So at that point, I'll never, it was Duke and Maryland. I had Maryland was in the ACC,
Hmm.
uh, two, two teams that, two teams from the same league as projected one seeds. And I don't know, like it happened so fast. Like I didn't even have time to probably get as nervous as I should have. All of a sudden I hear music, which even to this day, if they're playing highlights, there's a music
Yep.
bed under the B-roll. And Mike uh, was in my ear, and he's like, "Duke." And I'm like, "Well, and the Blue Devils are one seed, blah, 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 blah."
Yep.
And then Maryland. And the Terps are right behind them, because they've got Lonnie Baxter and Steve Blake and Juan Dixon. And as it turned out, both Duke and Maryland did make the Final Four that year. So I guess
There you
I'm
go.
pretty smart.
That's cool.
Doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, now I just want to ask you a couple questions about this year. Obviously, everything is still moving, but who are your one seeds right now?
Yeah, the top four, I think, are not very disputable today,
Right.
December 28th. Obviously, Gonzaga and Baylor, undefeated, are 1 and 2, and they're not going anywhere. And then there's a pair of one-loss teams, Villanova and Kansas, filling in the other two spots on the top line.
Okay.
And there's an undefeated team knocking on the door, Houston, but they've only played, I think, 6 games because of being on
Yep.
quarantine. And Wisconsin, whoever wins the Big Ten is going to be really in the hunt for a 1 seed.
Okay.
It's a question of how many losses they'll take to get there. So Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, all those teams are in the hunt for the top line. And I think eventually in the conversation, when they play some more games, will be Tennessee. I think they're really good, but it feels like they almost just started playing. I think they played 6 games. So hey, I'm thrilled that we're playing.
Yes, sir.
I'm pleasantly surprised at the quality of play. And I think the biggest dark horse in America would have to be those Winthrop Eagles.
That was my next question. What do you think? What do you think our ceiling would be? Obviously, March is a long ways away, but
it is, and ceiling probably 12 with a very outside shot at 11 if you run the table.
So okay.
The game at the Furman win was at Furman, right?
No, that was at home.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was a road game. Either way, those were like, that would have been like a comparable level game.
Yeah.
Where you whacked them.
Right. Yeah, we did.
and a lot of the ratings still have firm and ahead of you, the computer ratings. I'm not going to move them ahead of you until or unless you lose. And I caught a little bit of it online, so
Uh,
I try to follow, like, last night while most people were watching the Packers in the snow, I was watching UC Irvine and UC Santa Barbara in
mhm.
the Big West opener, mostly because of the cutaway shots of Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, that's crazy. Okay, so then you talk about those analytics. I know we got 8 minutes left. We got two more things. Um, the Ken Palm stuff is really popular these days. I talked to him too, so that was cool. How
Right.
does that kind of go
Now,
into
see, guys like that are way smarter than I am
why you say that?
because they've invented rating
Right.
systems.
No,
I
yeah.
only use them.
I was just gonna ask you, how you implement those into creating your bracketology, or even if you use them.
I look at everything.
Hmm.
Uh, and I have to look at everything because the committee looks at everything. There are, in addition to net, which replaced the RPI as the committee's primary metric,
Hmm.
there are 5 other publicly available metrics on the quote unquote team sheets that are used in the selection room. So the Pomeroy ratings, Jeff Sagarin, 2 ESPN ratings, the BPI and SOR, which is strength of record,
Hmm.
and also KPI, which is a metric developed by a guy at Michigan State by the name of Kevin Palgo, who's a young, smart, you know, analyst and administrator. And basically since, and this is the part that a lot of people don't get, like, my job isn't to say who I would pick.
Right.
My job is to forecast who they will pick.
Yes.
Right? Like everybody else on TV, and God bless them, they're giving you their opinion.
Right.
I think this team's better than that team.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's 1,000 guys doing that. And most of them are great.
Hmm.
Um, I try to step away and say, let's look at this from their point of view, right? Because at the end of the day, what former star player on such and such a channel says isn't really connected to the committee.
Yeah.
At least I'm applying their principles
Yep.
and using only their data,
Hmm.
along with some other data that I've invented to help me sort through it all in a real-time way. Because if there's a big game on a February Saturday and a potential 1 seed loses, well, the people watching TV want to know what the impact is going to be right now. They don't want to wait until the new ratings come out
Yeah.
or the committee does its pre-selection. Like, they want to know now. Well, does that knock off North Carolina from a number 1 seed or whatever?
Correct.
So I've had to develop ways to do that, more instantly to meet the demand of our audience. So again, my process is certainly different from other analysts, but it's even different in some ways from other bracketologists, because as good as many of them are, and a lot of them are super good at the analytics part, they don't have to go on TV every 45 minutes with changes, right? And that's okay. Like, that's the job. And
Good at it, man. It's fun to watch. I'll tell you that. Been watching you.
well, I leave that for other people to judge, but I have fun doing it, and
Sure.
I certainly do try to be as accurate as possible, because I know there's a lot of coaches and a lot of players and a lot of fans paying attention. If the messages I get on this bad boy are any indication.
Yeah, that's the world we live in today. So is that just your bracketology bunker this year?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if I'm going to have a bunker in Connecticut at the
Yeah.
network, because at this point, they haven't gotten to the stage of the year where, I'd be going up anyway.
Mhm.
And it can be done remotely.
Yep.
It's not as easy or as convenient for them, but yeah, this might be it.
Well, I just want to have a tournament, man, and I know you do too.
We're gonna have a tournament.
100%.
We're gonna have a tournament, and you guys are gonna be in it.
Yes, sir. 100%. I think we're right now. I think we're the 5-12 with Michigan State, but obviously everything changes. But I just
New bracket coming out tomorrow. I don't want to spoil it for you.
All right. I like that. Yes, sir. There you have it, Mr. Joe Lunardi. Thanks for coming on my podcast, man. It was awesome talking to you.
All right, go Eagles.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure thing. I'll be watching.